Howdy folks, hope you've all had a great weekend. Welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles, where, as you can probably tell, I'm once again joined on the couch by none other than Eddie. How's it been, Eddie?
Not bad. I'm a bit older, a bit tired.
Yeah, I'm a bit older, I'm 53, I had my birthday.
Yes, Merry Birthmas.
Yeah, and I got because I think it might have been in last week's episode, was talking about the bizarre price increases that just stuff that makes no sense whatsoever, mostly focusing on pet supplies. But I got a nice little birthday present from my energy company.
Go on.
So when I moved into this place a year ago this month, wow, it's been a year.
Yes.
Oh, I can see some birds out the window.
We'll cut that out, it's
Never
fine.
work with children or animals. Calm yourself, Akazuki. Hang on a second. There she is. That's usually one of her favourite spots during the day. But I'm always downstairs on the computer. So I didn't realise that she could see the birds from there. And, well, you know what cats are like when they see birds. So that's probably going to be going off in the background of this one.
This suddenly became a cat video.
It did. I can still see her in the corner of the shot.
Fair enough.
Now you have fun there, Akazuki. So yeah, anyway, been in
Yeah,
this
energy company.
Yeah, I've been in this place a year now, and obviously I had to do because when I was living with you, I just paid you rent and you paid the bills, so I've never had to worry about paying for gas, electricity, water, all that sort of thing.
Basically, most of what money you paid me on went on rent. I made very little from it.
Yeah. So I set up a direct debit to the energy company, and I paid them $150 a month because I thought, that should do. And it did, because every month they've been sending me £62 back, so I've actually been paying less than £100 a month. Now, I don't know if that was because I was on some kind of introductory tariff, but on my birthday, I got a letter from them letting me know that my direct debit was changing. It's gone up to £352 a month. Oh, God. So that's fun. It's more than tripled. Yep. So... what a time to be alive. So I just thought I'd share that one. It's great, isn't it? Fantastic.
Yes. Merry Birthmas to you.
Yeah, the joys of home ownership. Anyway.
Yes.
So you had something special. Oh, here she comes. Hello, little girl. What's going on here? Have you come to investigate? Okay, let's get the scratches. She's begging for treats. That's what that is. Yes, I know.
Well, anyway,
moving on.
Driving to work last Monday, and as ever, I was listening to Mingles with Jingles. To see what's happening. I'm one of the lazy ones that doesn't listen to it on the Sunday when you do your monthly Q&A. And one of your first questions was from someone called Bearcat Racing.
Yeah.
And I thought, I know that name. He's one of my subscribers. He's one of my most loyal, helpful subscribers. He always comments on everything. He always makes good suggestions. And I thought, I'm going on Mingles with Jingles next week. I should ask if there's any questions people want to ask. So I made a little video and I put up, do you want to ask, I'm going on Mingles with Jingles, do you want to ask him any questions? If so, leave comments on this video. And a fair few people did.
Yeah, there's a couple of pages of questions there.
Yes. Unfortunately, I managed to rip out I wrote all the questions down. I've managed to rip out the first few pages, so I haven't got all of them, including the question asked by Bearcat Racing. However, I remember what he asked, so I'm going to ask his first, and then we'll go through the rest of these. Any that aren't there, I apologise. I was crap, basically.
Yeah, basically. You thought, so these pages are a bit messy, I'll rip those out and start afresh, and there's questions all over them.
Yes, basically what I did. So Bearcat Racing wanted to know about our t-shirts.
Oh, yes.
He wanted to know, we'll start with what we got on.
So
this was a Christmas present from my mum.
This t-shirt was tested on animals, and they looked awesome. And mine's a reference to the Monkey Island games. So LeChuck, the ghost pirate LeChuck from the Monkey Island games, and Grog So there's that. The Big Whoop Brewery. So if you played any of the Monkey Island games, you'll know exactly what this is. But I do try to put, a decent T-shirt on for every episode that we record to the camera like this. So.
He wanted to know what the best T-shirt we've ever seen and or owned was.
Ooh. I think the best T-shirt I ever saw was wandering around a comic convention recently. Well, I say recently, it's been a while since we went to one. And somebody was selling T-shirts that had a picture of a KV2 on it, with the cold dead hand of Stalin guiding your shells to the target meme on it. And I thought, I came up with that.
So it's the best one because you came up with it.
Where's my royalties?
Well, I did see someone selling a World of Warships T-shirt with Akazuki on it, and it had your cat on it rather than the ship. So, I mean, that stuff does happen.
It does. I mean, I don't mind. It's not like...
Yeah.
I mean, I bumped into the Judge Dredd artist from 2000 AD, Mick McMahon. He also did Slain and other stuff in 2000 AD. It's a British comic. And he was a really, really nice guy. He did a drawing of Judge Dredd for me. He was actually hired on. So those of you who know anything about the comic Judge Dredd, the writer John Wagner, excuse me, and the sadly now deceased Spanish artist Carlos Esquerra were the ones who created and designed the look of Judge Dredd. But there was a problem because Dredd wasn't in the first issue of 2000 AD. He appeared in the second issue. And the reason why he wasn't in the first issue is because there was some kind of dispute between the editor Pat Mills and the writer John Wagner and the artist Carlos Esquerra. So they hired this young artist called Mick McMahon, basically because he could draw like Carlos Esquerra. So Mick McMahon was the first person to draw Judge Dredd and have it published, even though he didn't design the character and he didn't write the character.
Yeah.
And he's a lovely bloke. I met him at Bournemouth Comic Con many, many years ago. And the first thing I said when I saw him was like, fantastic. Particularly loved your opening double centre page spread for the Blockmania series in Judge Dredd. Blah blah blah. Oh, and by the way, when I was in New York at Midtown Comics, I got a statue of Judge Dredd. It's actually, I could probably go and get it, but whatever. It's Judge Dredd statue in the style of the artist Mick McMahon. And he went, "You what?" He never saw a penny.
Whoops.
So I upset him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's all these unlicensed. I mean, I say licensed, they got the permission from 2000 AD to do it because they had the 2000 AD logo on it, but Mick McMahon never saw a penny in royalties for stuff that was basically directly based on his work. So, there's a lot of it around.
So anyway, the T-shirt.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, for me, I think probably my favourite T-shirt is one of yours. It's the R.
Oh yeah, AH. The element of surprise.
Yes.
The periodic table.
Periodic table. AH. The element of surprise. I love that T-shirt.
I like that one
that's
as well.
really good, that one.
I've got some good ones. I've got the Coca-Cola one where instead of enjoy Coke, it just says obey Cthulhu. So I love, because there's all kinds of places, like there's lastexitnowhere.com that I tend to get a lot of my T-shirts from. I buy stuff at comic conventions. There's usually some really good stuff at conventions that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
And there used to be a company called Jinx. Apparently they've shut their doors now, but they did a load of World of Warcraft and games related T-shirts and stuff. But they're gone. I was looking them up the other day, thinking, I haven't seen any Jinx T-shirts in a while. I wonder what they're up to. Yep, website shut. Bummer. So but I do love unusual T-shirts.
Me too. When I'm not working, I tend to wear them.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I just have too many of them. I've had to start throwing some of them out and giving them away at charity shops and stuff because I've got dozens and dozens of T-shirts. I've got like drawers that are full of nothing but T-shirts. But I do have certain favourites, this being one of them.
Fair enough. Right, second question. Steiny in the Jets. What was yours and Jingles' first impression of each other? See, this is quite hard because I joined HMS Newcastle. You were already on.
Yeah,
it.
I think people get the impression that we met each other and there were, violins playing and it was love at first sight. But
Yeah. I was introduced to a mess. Our mess had about 14, 15 people in it. I was introduced to all of them at once.
Yeah, you joined the ship as a replacement for the previous canteen assistant. So it's just, you turned up and I was already in the mess deck. 14, 15 of us, we all knew each other, and this new guy wanders in. It was like, oh, it's the new canteen assistant.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
And the reality for you was, here's 15 people you've never met before in your life. This is him, this is him, this is him, this is him, this is him.
Yeah.
And I was just one of those people.
And here's the thing. One of the guys in the mess had introduced himself to me earlier. His name was Robbie.
Robbie.
And he became my best friend on the ship.
Robbie was such a good guy.
Yeah.
He was one of the stewards. It was just... The people didn't like him because he said what he meant.
Yeah.
Right. And
you never needed to know if you knew where you were with Robbie.
Exactly where you stood with Robbie.
Yeah.
He wasn't mean. He was the kind of guy that could have been a bully because he was big and strong. But he absolutely wasn't. He could very, very easily have been a complete arsehole. But he was just one of the straightest and nicest guys I ever knew. And he was your best friend on board, wasn't he?
Yeah. In the same way that Davey was your best mate.
My leading writer, Davey Crockett. His name wasn't actually Davey, but his surname was Crockett, so his nickname was Davey.
Yeah.
He was probably my best mate on board. And I ended up living with him.
Yeah.
He had a house in Brockhurst, not far from where your parents live.
Yeah, in Bridgemary.
Bridgemary, that was it. And I'd had enough of living on board. When I say living on board, obviously when you're on a ship, you don't get an awful lot of choice. The ship sails, you're living on board. But you also say living on board when you're living in a shore establishment. It's a Navy thing. And the shore establishment at the time was HMS Nelson. And the junior rate accommodation at the time were these two tower blocks, Keppel Block and Samaras Block. And they were condemned, but there was no money to build new ones, so we just had to live in them. And the fire alarm in Keppel Block would go off at 3 o'clock in the morning every night. So every night you had to evacuate the block, even though you knew it was a false alarm, because it had been going off every night at 3 o'clock in the morning for the last 4 months. You had to evacuate the block until they could confirm that the block wasn't actually burning down. And this was just one of the things that was wrong with Keppel Block. So yeah, you basically got no sleep. So that was fun. And I decided, screw this, I'm moving out. I'm going to live ashore. And I ended up because I had been a radio operator and then thought, this is way too much like hard work. I'm going to be a writer instead. So I applied to branch transfer, did writer training, and then got sent to HMS Nelson as my first draft. And one of the gunners on my ship, HMS Coventry, Dixie, at the same time had applied to become a chef. So I was working in the unit personnel office at Nelson, and he was working in the wardroom galley at Nelson. And the two of us rented this granny flat from an old retired Navy meteorological officer in Alverstoke Village. It was great. But then Dixie got drafted elsewhere, and I couldn't afford the place by myself. So Davey said, well, I've got a spare room. Fantastic.
I think at the time he'd just split with his missus, hadn't he? So
something like that. I can't remember the specifics. So I ended up renting a room from my leading writer, Davey Crockett, and that was fantastic.
I was kicking myself at that point because I just bought a house and it was 4-bedroom and I was living in it on my own. If I'd known you'd need it, I would have jumped at having you as a tenant. Instead, I ended up with fucking Topsy.
Oh God, this guy was a nightmare.
I would have asked Robbie to live with me, but he was married and lived just around the corner from me, so there was no point.
Yeah, in the married quarters.
In the married quarters.
The thing about Topsy was he wasn't a bad person. He was just lazy and selfish.
Yeah.
Never paid his rent, either on time or at all.
Yeah.
Poked his nose around in places that were none of his business.
Yeah.
Left the place a shithole. Never did any cleaning up. Never tidied. Never washed the dishes. He treated the place like a hotel, basically.
Yes.
And there's a lot of tenants like that. But I wasn't one of them.
No.
I came very highly recommended to you, didn't I?
Yes. Yeah.
Because...
We'll get to that later. It's in a later question.
Oh, it's another question. Okay. All right. Well, move on then.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that was our first impressions.
Yeah,
we didn't really know each other.
Yeah.
We were friends, but not
you're friends with everybody in the mess deck. Well, not everybody, but you coexist with everybody in the mess deck. And honestly, that mess was really good.
It was a great mess, yeah.
There was only ever one arsehole in it, and that would have been TCM.
Yes, but we'll not mention him.
Anyway.
Right.
So, next question.
Alan Larson, what's the worst meal/dinner you've ever had?
That's a tough one.
Because I've had some really great meals around the world, and I'd find narrowing them down quite hard.
Yeah, I mean, I remember all the great places I've eaten, but I don't remember. Oh, I do. I just remembered the worst place I ever ate was on. It was a Type 23 frigate in dry dock, and I was day working on board it, just helping out, and it is the worst food I have ever had in my life. At lunchtime. On a ship, there's usually a cooked option and
rolls
and bread rolls, sandwiches, cheese and ham, tuna, whatever. I've been on a lot of ships where the lunchtime cooked option wasn't particularly appetizing, so you just go for the sandwich. But they even managed to make the sandwiches disgusting on this ship.
It takes a lot of skill to fuck up bread.
Yeah, they managed to screw up bread. It was awful. So yeah, I can't remember the ship. It might have been Somerset. I don't know. It was some Type 23 frigate. Because the thing you have to remember is the British government provides more money to feed a police dog.
Police dogs, yeah.
Than it does to feed a sailor. Right? The amount of money that the caterer gets to actually provide food for us is pitiful, and the chefs do the best they can. They really do try.
They don't have great cooking gear to begin with. Yeah. It's in a galley on a ship. They don't have all the stuff they'd like to. Yeah. And then they've got no budget.
The ingredients they're given are the cheapest that they can get their hands on. So most of the time they do put the effort in, and you can tell. But it was pretty clear on this ship that nobody gave
no shits were given.
Shits were not given. It was just get the shit on the counter, and they just didn't care.
That kind of reminds me of something. When I was on the Newcastle, I was on there with my manager, who was also called Eddie, and he'd been on the Edinburgh the year before, and that did 125 days without going alongside, due to shit keeping going wrong every time they were due to go alongside. And the NAFI actually ran out of food for 5 days.
Wow.
Because they just couldn't get alongside and get stores. And in those 5 days, the chief caterer actually learned what it was like to feed the entire ship's company.
That's right, yeah.
And was shocked.
Yeah, because it wasn't unusual. So is usually. It wasn't unusual for people to say, I'm not going to bother with lunch, or I'm not going to bother with dinner, I'll just go to the NAFI. But when the NAFI's got nothing, suddenly the caterer is like, oh my
apparently
God.
They picked up these really shitty breadsticks from somewhere, and they're like, these are the things we're never going to get rid of. Even those were gotten rid of, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway. I don't know what the worst meal I've ever had was, but it was probably on a ship somewhere.
Yeah, almost certainly.
But to be fair, there were some very good meals with what they had to deal with. I don't want to put a negative...
Yeah. I mean, I remember we were in Sunderland on, I think it might have been HMS Brazen, Type 22 frigate. It was definitely a Type 22. And we were docked at the Fisherman's Jetty. And because the caterers can be amazingly inventive and resourceful. Yeah. So the caterer knew that if he was up early enough, he could go down the quarterdeck and trade the ship that he had with the fishermen as they came in. And he was doing that. So, turn to 8 o'clock in the morning, you're down there on the quarterdeck prior to both watches, having a quick cigarette. The caterer's there with crates of chicken, and there's a fishing boat right next to the quarterdeck, and he's handing over crates of chicken and whatever, and they're handing over fresh squid, lobster, and we ate like princes that night. It was fantastic. So, they do try, but most of the time, you can't make a silk purse out of a pig's ear, regardless of how hard you try. But most of the chefs that I knew were really good, and they did really try.
Yeah.
Although, again, story about Dixie, the chef who was a gunner on board HMS Coventry and trained as a chef and was at Nelson at the same time. There are chefs who try, and then there are chefs who try. And you could always tell, like when you went for breakfast in the main galley, you could tell that Dixie was in the galley, because he would do things that the other chefs mostly wouldn't bother at breakfast time. Like when the sausages were being grilled, you could tell Dixie had done them because they were grilled on both sides.
Yeah.
Instead of just on top.
Yeah, Dixie was the one that used to go around making cakes and giving them to people, and yeah.
Oh, we're going down a rabbit hole here. Let's move on.
Let's move on. Right. Mike Foot asks, if you could travel back in time, what advice would present-day Jingles give teenage Jingles?
Don't join the Navy as a radio operator. Join the Navy, yes, but not as a radio operator. The reason I joined as a radio operator was because the local newspaper up in Newcastle, the Evening Chronicle, was actually doing adverts specifically for join the Navy as a radio operator. I thought, I'll join the Navy as a radio operator. It never occurred to me to ask, what is so bad about being a radio operator?
That's the one you need to fill.
That's the one they need to fill the gaps. Why are all the radio operators quitting? Right. Never occurred to me to ask that question. And I mean, it wasn't that bad, but you're kind of like the red-headed stepchildren of the operations department.
Yes.
Right, you're part of the ops department, what's known as the warfare department now. Branches like the radar operators, the weapons, the people that sit in the ops room and looking at radar displays and electronic warfare and all that stuff. But you're not in the ops room. You're next to the ops room in the communications office. So when nobody gives a shit about the radio operators until the radios aren't working properly.
Yeah.
Right. You're invisible. As long as you're doing your job properly, nobody knows you exist.
Oh, and you get to have classified information that you can't talk to anyone about.
Yes.
So when you've had shit all day and you just want to let it all out, you can't. Because it's all fucking classified.
Yeah. So there's like anytime the ops department had to provide a bunch of bodies to do a shitty job, they always remembered, oh yeah, the radio operators are part of this department, and they grab half a dozen of us. But anytime the ops department were having, they were getting BZs, good, well done, good job. Here's some beers. They forgot that we existed.
Yes, yeah.
So we were only there for the shit that the ops department was involved in, and never the good stuff that the ops department was involved in, and also watchkeeping, and you're keeping shifts, and no, screw that. So I went writer, 8 till 4, done. Yeah. In bed every night.
So if you could go back, you would just join as a writer. I would just join as a writer.
Yeah. Don't join as a radio operator.
Fair enough. Good advice for yourself. Right. I love cloves. I'm interested in what type of board games have you and Jingles tried, apart from the Aliens co-op?
I can show you some of them, actually. I'll be right back. I've got a couple stacked up over here.
That makes sense.
Actually, I'll just get the smaller ones. And one that people might actually recognise. Did you know there's a World of Tanks board game? Well, it's not a board game, it's a miniatures game. It's like We have actually played this.
We've played this a couple of times.
And it is surprisingly good.
Yes, we intend to do a video on it.
Yeah, but stuff keeps happening.
Yeah, events conspire.
Yeah, that's actually not bad. Plus, it comes with the miniatures of the tanks, which I keep meaning to get around to painting.
Yeah.
And it's actually not bad. They've done a really good... This is actually from the same people that did the Aliens. Yeah, Gale Force 9, same people that did the Aliens board game.
Yeah.
So, unsurprisingly, they've done a really, really good job. It does actually play in the way that you would imagine a miniatures version of the World of Tanks game should play. Things
and just like in the actual video game, you tend to beat me. You are a better player than me.
There's another one here, Exploding Kittens. This is really, really good. A card game for people who are into kittens and explosions and laser beams and sometimes goats. This was apparently the #1 most backed Kickstarter ever, at least until Star Citizen came out. The basic idea is that you've got these cards, and like this one, for example. Oh, my eyes are getting bad. See the future. You summon the mantis shrimp, and it allows you to view the top 3 cards of the draw pile. The idea is that you never want to have, let's see if I can find one, an exploding kitten. There we go. There's the exploding kitten card. If you end your turn with an exploding kitten card in your hand, you die, you're out, you explode. So the idea is to try to get rid of these cards and shift them off onto other people. And it is just an amazingly good game.
Yeah, it's very surreal.
Really silly, it's really simple, and it's so much fun. And then there's another one. These little card games are great, because I think these board games.
This is one of my favourite games that we've played.
Yeah, it's called.
I absolutely love this.
It's called Trial by Trolley. So
and if we could ever pin Rita down,
because you can't.
It's a 3-player game. You need 3 players, no more, no less.
No, you can do with.
Yeah, but
with 4. You have 2 teams of 2.
No, because you need a third person who's the.
No, you can do it with 2 teams of 2.
Okay, I'll take your word on it.
It works with 3, it works with 4, 5, 6, whatever. But
we can never pin Rita down to actually record one.
Yeah. So this is, the moral dilemma, where it's called Trial by Trolley, okay? And trolley, for those of you who aren't American, is a tram, right? So the idea is you're driving a tram, and then the tracks are going to split, and on one side of the track
is something.
There's a baby, and on the other side of the tram there's an old man.
Yeah.
Which way do you go? And justify your choice. That's the idea. That's the moral dilemma. But in Trial by Trolley, it works the same way. But on one side of the you basically get to put things down on your side of the track to try to convince the driver, one person's the driver, to go the other way, to not go your way. So you could put, for example, let's try to find a card. Yeah, on my side of the track is the Empire State Building. Are you really going to destroy this architectural wonder? Maybe you will. Maybe on the opponent's side of the track, they've got the world's entire supply of coffee beans. So I would absolutely take out the Empire State Building.
Whereas I don't drink coffee.
Yeah, so you would take out the world's supply of coffee beans.
So it's not about...
it's about knowing...
It's about knowing the person you're playing.
Yeah.
Because... He knows, for example, if there's something to do with dogs and he puts dogs down,
you are not going to.
I'm not going to hit those dogs.
Even if there's a
baby on the other side.
Even if there's an orphan convention on the other side, he will kill the orphans rather than the dogs. Because
yes,
and it's the same with me with cats,
with cats,
or dogs.
Yeah,
but then you can modify them. So, for example, he's going to go for the world's entire supply of coffee beans because he doesn't drink coffee. So I get to then modify. Like, for example, I could say that the Empire State, no, because you're going to go for the Empire State, but I could say that the world supply of coffee beans, because I wanted to go for that and not take out my Empire State Building, the world supply of coffee beans is thinking something really terrible about you right now. You can try to influence the decision. It's a really, really good game. It's incredibly simple and it's incredibly funny.
Yeah, and there are no absolute winners or losers. It's literally the person who's driving the tram who decides which team wins.
Yeah.
And it's great.
And you're trying to influence that person based on what you know about them.
And filming it will literally be laughing at how well we know each other.
Yeah, exactly.
And
fantastic game.
Yeah, but again, it's tying Rita down to a time
where we can get, because we can't do it with 2 people.
Yes. Anyway, great question.
Yeah, very good.
Right. Robbie Humphrey, Eddie, what's your day job and how is it affected by the World Cup? Right.
Yeah.
In my video about this, I apologised for not having put any content up for a while. One of the reasons was the World Cup interfered with my job. For those of you who don't know, I work for a certain pizza company.
You can say it.
Domino's. And I deliver pizzas for them. It's easy and I'm lazy, which has a lot to do with why I like it.
And you like driving.
I'm very good at it. I love driving. And so it incorporates everything I like.
He is very good at it, by the way. He keeps getting nominated for best Domino's pizza delivery driver in Britain.
Driver of the year.
Driver of the year.
I came 3rd in the country.
He came 3rd in the country, and then they did driver in the county, best driver in the county of Hampshire, and he didn't win it, even though he was 3rd best in the entire country. And nobody else from Hampshire made it in the top 3. But somehow, the math behind that one I couldn't figure out.
Yeah, never mind. That happened. I'm not bitter about it. But yeah, obviously with the World Cup happening, lots more people were ordering pizzas and they offered us lots of incentives to come in and work extra hours. So I took them. And the fact is that my channel suffered because I wasn't uploading videos because I was spending all my spare time either sleeping or working.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's how.
But yeah, funnily enough, people don't want to cook food. They just order pizza and drink
Yes.
beer when the World Cup's on. So
Yeah,
you were
that's-
really busy.
That's literally how that happened. But yeah, no, I work for Domino's, and a lot of people get worried about me. They're like, "Oh, you need to be monetizing your channel. You need to be making more money." I work for a Domino's that actually pays me well. I'm paid above minimum wage, and they do a lot of things for us that are above and beyond. So seriously, don't worry about it. It's not that bad.
He does all right.
I do all right. Next question. Do you know how to pronounce that?
Daggers.
Durgas, yeah. How do you balance work life with content creation? And do you get to the point where adding content is done mostly to get the guilty conscience eased?
Is this addressed to you or me or both of us?
I think both of us. See, I sometimes do. I felt really guilty about not uploading anything for the last 3 months. And I apologised for that in my video. And it got to the point where I was trying to upload something to just ease the guilt from not having put anything on. But because
because you wanted to upload
because I'm not taking money from it, I'm doing this in my own time. It's not that bad, you know.
Yeah, on the other hand, for me, I put a video up every day except for Sundays because it's paying my mortgage and my energy bill just more than tripled. So I don't really take a lot of time off. I have one day off a week and I have 2 weeks off a year around Christmas. I haven't had a holiday, vacation, or gone anywhere other than for a day, like Comic Con or something like that, in...
It would be that road trip you took with Roy,
with Roy, which was about 4 or 5 years ago. So I just work. That's all I do.
So no guilt from you.
Yeah, no guilt. I just do it because the hardest thing for me is finding stuff to do a video on that I actually enjoy. That I'm not just doing it because people... And I know this sounds weird because I know I do 2 World of Warships and 1 World of Tanks video every week, but I enjoy doing the World of Warships and World of Tanks videos. But at the same time, I don't want to just do World of Warships and World of Tanks videos. So the hard thing is finding something that I enjoy, and I think you lot might enjoy. And occasionally I strike gold, like the Chaos Gate Demon Hunters videos, which were amazingly popular, the Cold Waters videos, and occasionally I do stuff that's not so popular, like the Deliver Us Mars series I'm doing at the moment. I mean, it's not unpopular, but it's nowhere near as popular as the regular stuff that I do. But I'm enjoying it, so it's important that I do enjoy it, because if you know when you're watching YouTube and somebody's being really enthusiastic about something, let's not mention any names here, but you can tell it's fake, right? They're doing it because they've got to push the video out in order to collect the sponsorships.
Yeah.
I don't do that. So no, I have to try to. It's not that I push stuff out to ease the conscience about not pushing stuff out. I push stuff out because I enjoy doing it, and the trick is picking stuff that you enjoy doing. So
Yeah, I think the thing that highlights that is the fact that whenever you take a holiday, everybody knows you're going to put a video up because you miss doing it.
Yeah,
And
I get bored and I think I should do a video on this.
and so you do.
So I'll see you in 2 weeks, and then 3 days later there's a video.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say no for you. Yes, I do feel guilty, but not too bad because I know it's not. Yeah. Right. LMAO. You should get Jingles to write a complete autobiography, and you can voice it so it can be an audiobook. No. I feel if he was to do an audiobook, he should voice it.
Or you write one, I write one, I narrate yours, and you narrate mine.
We do each other's, yes. That'll work.
That's a lot of work, though.
Yeah, I have to say, of all the questions that were asked, a lot of them were more Navy dits, please.
Yeah.
About 3/4 of the questions asked were all more Navy stories.
That's basically what the autobiography would be. I mean, there was like when I was growing up in South Africa and Swaziland, that would be probably quite interesting. But most people are just in there for the stories about the Navy. Because most of them are hilarious. But most of you have heard most of them before anyway, because
I've got a few lined up, and but I don't want to use them all up and then have nothing in future videos.
But I mean, this is episode 460.
I think this might be 70. I think it was 469 last week.
It's nearly 500. I mean, you've probably at some point, well, it depends how new you are to the channel, I suppose. But a lot of the stories that I tell are recycled, as I've told them before.
Yeah.
But, people like them, so fine, whatever.
Right. Kyle Everly. What would you say is the most unusual skill you have trained or worked on developing? See, for me, before I joined NAFI, when I was working at McDonald's as a poor student, I thought I'm going to want to be more employable. I should learn a skill. So I started to learn British Sign Language. And the idea being that I would be able to communicate with deaf people. However, I then got a job where it's absolutely useless. You cannot have deaf people on a ship because it's on a Royal Navy ship because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And whenever you go to foreign countries, they speak other sign language. Each country has their own sign language, and if they don't, they use American.
Yeah.
So I haven't kept up with it.
Completely
and I know
useless.
very little about it.
Yeah, almost completely useless.
Almost completely useless. But yeah, I developed that skill for a couple of years.
For me, wow. I suppose Morse code.
Morse code.
Yeah, because when I joined the Navy as a radio operator, the Army didn't use Morse code, the Air Force doesn't use Morse code, but the Navy still did.
Yeah.
Mostly for visual signalling. So when you're there on the old signal lantern, you're transmitting in Morse code.
Yeah.
You're not transmitting complete sentences most of the time. You're transmitting what are called OPSIGs, operating signals. Like, I can't even remember them now, but like int, ZBZ, oh no, that would be a radio one. But there are, so that you don't have to transmit, like spelling out,
Yeah.
who the hell are you?
Yeah.
There would be like a three.
Yeah.
I think
Almost
it'd be
like
AA.
SOS, for example.
Yeah, like SOS. I think AA, you transmit dit-dar, 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 dit-dar. That's a challenge. So the other ship would have to come back and identify themselves. So rather than saying, who the hell are you, you just go dit-dar, 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 AA, AA, until you get a reply back from them. So things like that.
So, yeah, you learn Morse code.
Yeah, but then again, I was a radio operator brackets general rather than radio operator brackets tactical. So I didn't do flashing light, but everybody had to learn it.
Yeah.
So I forgot it the first opportunity.
Yeah,
I
as
had.
you do.
And then, of course, I got drafted down to the Falkland Islands in the communications centre there. And I was the only Navy in my watch. And they actually had Morse communications with the...
A little tapper.
Yeah, a little... And you almost never had to use it, except for there was a...
Except for when you did.
Except for when you did. And then everybody turned around and looked at me and said, "You're the Navy one." So I'm there with a cheat sheet,
With a cheat sheet.
Morse code cheat sheet, trying to remember how to do it to communicate with this ship.
Well, I could have done this if it's written down.
Yeah, the Air Force could have done that. So I had to really quickly remember how to do Morse code again. Oh, that was a bit of a nightmare. But yeah, I've never used it since.
Yeah.
Why would I?
Right. Scott, what do you watch/listen to for fun when you want to relax?
Instagram mostly. I'll go to bed at night and I'll grab the phone.
Cat videos.
Cat videos, dog videos on Instagram mostly. I used to do. I still try to do YouTube, but unfortunately, YouTube's recommendations have just turned to dog shit over the last couple of months. I'll scroll through. No, not interested. Not interested. Thank you. We'll tune your recommendations. Not interested. Thank you. We'll tune your recommendations. Not
They won't,
interested.
will they?
They never tune their recommendations. They keep showing me the same shit.
For me, it's what I've got into recently is reaction videos. And when I say reaction videos, I don't mean people who are hearing Freddie Mercury's voice for the first time going, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
For me, it's people watching movies, and specifically movies I love, because I love sharing media that I love with other people. And it turns out I don't need to know these people. Watching them react to films that I love is just as good.
Watching them get excited by all the good bits that you got excited
especially when it's a film like, for example, watching someone watch Terminator 2. They don't know the twist that's coming up in the middle because they haven't had it ruined by all the previews beforehand.
Yeah.
So when they suddenly see Arnie's the good guy in this, and their reaction is, "Oh, that's incredible!" It's and I just love watching.
I'm not a fan of reaction videos.
I can understand.
When they're genuine, they're
Yeah.
great, but a lot of them, you're
Yeah.
like, how can you have never heard Freddie Mercury's voice?
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. That's why I'm very careful when I say reaction videos. It's to the movies and stuff like that. But yeah, that's what I like to do to relax in my spare time at the moment. Cheshire the Fat. What's the reason you invited Jingles to live with you for all those years?
Oh, yeah, this goes back to
the other question.
So I was renting a room from
Davy Crockett.
On HMS Newcastle, because he had his own house in Bridgemary, and one of the other lads from the mess deck,
Topsy?
Pam, yeah, had the other room. So there's three of us. We called it, because the mess deck that we lived on the Newcastle was 2Q Port Mess, so we just called Davy's house the 2Q Port Mess Annex.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
But Davy got a job. He got promoted, and he got promoted to petty officer, and then he got sent out to the British Embassy in Islamabad.
Yeah,
in Pakistan.
I think I should take over at this point
Go on then.
because basically it's about 3 years after the decommission of HMS Newcastle. May she rust in peace. And I receive a phone call, and it's from Dave, and he's like, "Eddie, have you got any spare rooms?" I was like, "You've got a house, you don't need a spare room." He's like, "I know Topsy's gone," and he was. I was like, "I don't have a spare room at the moment. I won't have one till August. This is about February time." He's like, "That's perfect. I'm being moved being moved away. I'm going to have to sell my house, and I don't want Bobby to be homeless. I'd much prefer to tell him that I've got a room lined up for him when I tell him I have to ask him to move out."
Yeah.
No worries, I'll be deployed at the time, but yeah, he can have one of my rooms. And so
Davey sat me down. He said, "Right, there's good news and there's bad news." 'Cause I've been living with him for like 3 years at that point.
yeah,
He said, I'm being sent to Pakistan, which I knew. He said, "But I'm going to have to sell the house." Oh shit. He says, "But I've taken care of you. I've organised you somewhere to live." I was like, "Huh?" He says, "Yeah, Eddie's got a spare room." Bingo!
and the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Yeah, my parents helped you moved in when while I was away.
15 years later,
Yeah, yeah.
I ended up in this place. I finally managed to get my own house. Haven't finished paying for it. Oh,
We're now in a race. Actually, I've got about 14 months left to pay on my house.
well, because I've got a 5-year mortgage on this place, but it's a 2-year fixed rate, and then because I kind of got this place at the best and worst time, because I got it right after all of the interest rates went poof.
Yeah,
But I got a 2-year fixed rate, so I got the good interest rate. But after 2 years, it goes to the oh my god interest rate. So my plan, and I'm saving money like a mad thing, is to pay it all off after the first 2 years. It'll cost me 1,500 quid in an early repayment fee.
but that's better than
But it's better than the
the
20,000 it would cost.
Yeah.
Over the following 3 years.
So in about a year's time, you'll be looking to pay yours off. I've got 14 months left on my, which I will be paying off early because I put money in when I had it. So my 25-year mortgage will be paid off in about 20 years. So it's now a race between us to see who pays off their house first.
Because I really, really, really need to pay the mortgage off. Because that'll be a huge weight off my shoulders. I'll actually own it. I won't be paying a mortgage every month, which is good because they've just more than tripled my energy bill. And everything else, nothing else is getting cheaper. So year from now, I mean, technically I'm a homeowner, but the bank owns probably about 40% of it. So hopefully a year from now, it'll all be mine.
Idris Taylor. I recall some old. I have to be careful with this because I keep mispronouncing it. I keep saying antidotes when I mean anecdotes.
Anecdotes, stories.
I recall some old stories newer viewers will not have heard. I request you go over them, e.g. Jingles on guard duty, old commander's widow, setting us straight on how to approach the gate.
Yes. We talked about this earlier because most of my stories are recycled. Most of you have heard them before, but then again, there's going to be a lot of newer viewers.
And some of them were deleted in the apocalypse.
So
I think that was the point they were making.
The one that Idris is talking about here is I was still a radio operator at the time, and I was at the air station at Yeovilton down in Somerset, work in security. So I was a main gate armed sentry basically. And there were multiple gates. There's the main gate, and then across the road from the main gate is the wardroom where the officers live. So there's a gate there that needs to be manned. And then down the road, right next to the Fleet Aero Museum, on the opposite side of the road, there's Flag Officer Naval Aviation, which is like a long drive from the main road to the actual gate of the headquarters building. And I was on that gate one day, and you're not there alone. You're basically there as security. You don't actually check people's IDs and car passes and stuff.
But you're the one with the gun.
I'm the one with the gun. Covering the Ministry of Defence Guard, who are civilian.
For obvious reasons, not carrying guns.
Not carrying weapons. They're the ones that actually control access, and you're just there as security for them. So, on this gate, and remember, it's about a 200 metre drive from the main road to actually get to the gate. And I hadn't been working security there for very long. But, you know, when you're handed a weapon, you also get a Rules of Engagement card, an ROE card, when you are allowed to actually open fire. And one of those circumstances is if somebody is driving a vehicle at the checkpoint and they're going to kill somebody at speed. You know,
because it then becomes a weapon.
Because that vehicle then becomes a weapon. It's classed as a weapon. You're allowed to shoot the driver if you have no other choice. And you know, it could be a car bomb for all you know, and your job is to protect that gate and the people
and the base and everybody in the base.
So anyway, now I didn't know this person, but the previous commander, not the captain, right? The commander, the second in command of the air base. The previous commander had died, and he was survived by his widow, who was a bit of a Karen apparently.
Yeah.
She still believed that sometimes you get officers' wives, and it's more a thing in the army than the navy, where like the colonel's wife basically is an officer, because they organise the colonel's social calendar and this and that, and you know, the colonel's wife says jump, you say how high. That's not really a thing in the navy. Officers' wives and husbands, and somebody's car alarm is going off. They tend to be seen but not heard. You know, they're not really a part of the whole thing. But this previous commander's widow, she thought she was royalty or something. And again, this was before I was there, but she would throw social events and stuff for the officers and local dignitaries, and she acted like royalty. And even after her husband died and he was no longer the commander and she was no longer the commander's wife, for some reason she still had a pass to get on and off the base, and she still acted as if she owned the place, and she was well known to the other security personnel on the gates, but not to me. I've never heard of her. So I'm there on the gate, got my rifle, it's loaded but not cocked, so you know, there's a magazine inserted, there are bullets in the magazine, and I can't remember the name. He was a nice guy, I can't remember his name, but the mod guardsman I was on the gate with for that particular shift called my attention to a car that was coming off the main road and driving the 200 metres up the road to the gate. So the usual procedure was I would stand in the middle of the road. We had a sleeping policeman, a speed bump just in front of the gate. The gate had a crash barrier, but the barrier was up during the day. You'd only drop it at night. So the procedure was I would stand on, you know, the safe side of the speed bump, just in the way, and there goes that car alarm again, in order to stop the car, and then the mod guardsman would go and they'd check the car pass and they'd check the ID, and then they'd wave them through, and I would get out of the way. So I took my position up in the middle of the road, you know, rifle at the low port, and this car started accelerating. And I thought, that's strange. So it was only a 200 metres, I didn't have a lot of time to react. And they were not slowing down. So I put my hand up and they started accelerating faster. And now they're about 100 metres away. And I probably had like 3 or 4 seconds to react. So I reacted, cocked the weapon, aimed it at the driver, and they immediately slammed the brakes on. And they stopped, literally. The speed bump is there, I am here, and 8 inches from my knee is the front bumper of the car. And it was only then, and I still didn't know who she was, white knuckles gripping the steering wheel, shaking, looking straight down the muzzle of my rifle as the mod guardsman says, "It's all right, Bobby, I've got this." She thought she was too good to stop and show her
Apparently
ID.
she'd been doing that for years.
She'd been doing it for years, just completely ignoring the security staff on the gates, just driving past them, because don't you know who I am? She never did it again after that.
No.
And I thought, I'm in the shit now. But no.
Had she not started braking when she had, you'd have had to shoot her.
Or get out of the way. I don't know what I would have done. I would have had to dive for cover or shoot. And to this day, I do not know which way I would have jumped.
Doesn't matter, you didn't have to make that decision.
Didn't have to make that decision, thank God. And she started respecting the security staff after that.
Everyone's a winner, except her.
The watch commander didn't say a word. You know, there was no bollocking, there was no praise either.
No.
But nobody said anything.
The fact that you weren't bollocked says a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Quick edit here because the memory card just filled up as we were answering the last question. So, from the top.
Right. What movies do you think are functionally perfect? That was from
Vorlono?
Vorlono 010.
Right. Functionally perfect movies. The list I came up with was, and probably won't be a massive surprise to any of you, Alien, Aliens, the Back to the Future movies.
Yep.
Because you're a huge fan of the Back to the Future movies.
Absolutely. There are films I like more. However, I wouldn't call them functionally perfect.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the flaws in the movie that give it the character that it has.
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction.
I didn't mention that last time, and you know what?
That's right.
It absolutely is.
Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. And you know what? Jackie Brown.
Not a fan.
Well, I wasn't. Nobody liked Jackie Brown when it came out. It was Quentin Tarantino's third movie. So he did Reservoir Dogs, which was shot on a shoestring. And it was a massive success. And then he got the money to do Pulp Fiction, which everybody loved. And then he did his third movie, Jackie Brown. And basically everybody said, "This isn't Pulp Fiction. I don't like it." And I didn't like it. I watched it again recently.
And I haven't given it a chance since.
And it is amazing. It's probably Samuel Jackson's best performance ever.
So give it another go,
Give
is what you're saying.
Now that you're older and not stupid.
Not a teenager.
You're not a teenager anymore. Because everybody hated Jackie Brown when it came out because it wasn't Pulp Fiction 2. Completely different kind of movie. But that's Tarantino, he does what he wants.
Yeah.
And Jackie Brown is amazing. Also Heat was the other one.
Yes, we were discussing that.
Yeah.
As I said, LA Takedown needed to be remade.
LA Takedown, most people have heard of Heat, but they haven't heard of LA Takedown, which is Heat, just made a few years earlier with nobody you ever heard of, by the same director, Michael Mann. And then, of course, he did Miami Vice.
Yeah.
And he made a bit of a name for himself, and then they remade Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and it's perfect. See, I don't mind. I like, when I'm watching a movie, I like everything in it to be at least internally consistent. I don't care if there are, wizards and dragons and stuff, but as long as the wizards and dragons make sense within the context of the movie, it's fine.
Yes.
But when they don't even make
when they don't follow their own rules,
when they don't follow their own rules, I get annoyed. Alien makes perfect sense. Aliens makes perfect sense. The original Terminator.
Yeah.
Although I wasn't a huge fan of Terminator 2. I know everybody loves it, and it is a great movie, but you could tell that there were things that they did in Terminator 2 that weren't done to serve the story, but were just done to serve Arnold Schwarzenegger's ego.
Yeah.
Because he was a megastar at the time, and he could do what he could get what he wanted, even with a director like Jim Cameron, where most people can't.
Yeah.
I don't have a huge list of perfect movies, but those are some.
Yes. Yeah, as I said, for me, Pulp Fiction. Even some of the flaws people have picked out on it, I don't think that's a flaw. I think that's a deliberate choice by Tarantino.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into dissecting the film in this video.
We'd be here all night.
Yes.
But if you haven't seen Pulp Fiction, do. It's amazing. Because we just assume that we talk about Alien and Aliens and Back to the Future and Terminator, and we just assume everybody's seen them.
We are film nerds.
Yeah, but we're film nerds, and these movies are 30 and 40 years old. So a lot of people probably maybe haven't even heard of them.
Yeah.
And if so, you're missing out. Anyway.
Yeah, there was one last question.
Yes.
Why did you join NAFI instead of the Navy?
Okay, go on then.
Right, I grew up in Gosport. The military was all around me my entire life. I just thought that was normal. People have often talked about how they grew up and how everything that was around them was just normal.
Yeah.
And this was it for me. I assumed everybody grew up with military bases at their front doorstep,
Yeah,
you know.
everywhere.
And in Gosport, there are two types of people. There are actual military who live there because it's where they work, and there are other people who hate the military.
Yeah.
And
It's not as bad as Plymouth.
no.
They are actually quite proud of the Navy here,
Yes.
even if they don't like the Navy very much.
Yes. Yeah, it's more that they don't like them rather than they hate them.
Yeah.
So I never really wanted to join the military, but I did want to see the world.
Yeah. And so your choices were join the NAFI or join the Air Force.
Yes, if I don't want to be in the military, join the NAFI or join the Air Force. That's a very good way of putting it. And the NAFI just seems slightly more hardcore.
Yeah. Slightly more hardcore and at least vaguely military.
Yes.
It's somewhat disciplined as
Yeah.
opposed to the Air Force.
So yeah, that was why I joined NAFI.
Yeah. And I think on that bombshell, because that's the last
So
question.
that's the last question I've got here. There were many more, and I apologise, I've lost them, but it's gone on a long time. We'd have had to do a separate video for
Yes,
them
we
anyway.
probably would.
So with that in mind,
That, I'm afraid, is it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. Hope you've enjoyed it. And as always, it's goodbye from him.
and it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye.